In this video, I'm going to show you the miniatures that I got done in 2021. That rhymes. So another year is in the books, as it were. I guess it's a little better than 2020. That's about all I got to say about that. So I was thinking about making a kind of a retrospective video about the year and all that and whatnot and things that I talked about here on the channel. But honestly, you can just go watch the old videos if you want to. That's probably, in this situation, better for all of us because you can pick and choose and whatever. So, go to the channel and check out the last year's worth of videos if you're so interested. Ciao. Although you're kind of already here, so you don't, but you see what I'm saying. But then I thought, well, what if instead I just went through and talked about the miniatures that I got done this year? And then I thought, well, how do I remember all of the miniatures I got done? I feel like I painted a bunch, and I kind of did. Luckily, when you're me, you post things on social media a bunch, and so then you have till the end of time, probably, a way to track all of the things that you've done. So I just went back through Twitter and looked at all the stuff that I posted on about, hey, I'm going live on Twitch painting this, and all that kind of stuff, starting in January and then going all the way forward. And then filled in the spots with the things that I did kind of on the side that I didn't do on Twitch or that, whatever. If you're interested, by the way, I paint on Twitch. I mention it here from time to time, but I paint on Twitch Friday mornings, 10 a.m. Central, Monday nights, 7 p.m. Central. Lately, I've been mainly working on new stuff for Warcry, but I do that quite a bit. And every once in a while, people poke their heads into Twitch and are like, I didn't know that when did you start doing this? And I'm like, a year and a half ago. And so, if you're interested and you like to maybe just listen in the background while you're doing other stuff, or maybe you like to hobby along, check me out on Twitch and let's get to the models. One of the first things that I painted up and finished this year were these spirit hosts. They are part of the Night Haunts warband. Initially, I was going to use them in a Night Haunts 1,000-point list. I was going to do some team play with our friend Sam Lenz. You should definitely be subscribed to Sam Lenz here on YouTube. Pachow. But yeah, these guys were pretty quick and easy. They were I would bet they're real hard to build, but I bought them on eBay already pre-built. So I just had to scrape some mold lines because, people who sell their stuff unpainted on eBay very rarely, ever scrape off a single mold line ever. So, if you do that, you buy stuff from eBay, do a little bit of scraping, get ready for that. And then I had to glue some things kind of back together because shipping, I suppose. And then it was just priming and then throwing some of that. It's one of those technical paints that they made just before Contrast came out, and they kind of made them for the Wraith or the Night Haunts or whatever. And they worked pretty well. And so now I'm going to be using them in Warcry. Not all of them, but at least one of them will show up in a list at some point. Also, early on in the year, I was still making stuff for Kill Team, which for the most part I've kind of stalled out on because I've been focusing more on Warcry because it seems like it's a game that I'm still interested in. So, but because of that, I did still work on some stuff, and I worked on these Adeptus Mechanicus. They were a lot of fun to do. The metallic that I wanted to go with, instead of just being a standard silver, I wanted them to be like a soft brass. And I literally just painted them silver with my favorite Vallejo Model Metallic Air silver paint, which is just called silver, but it's an airbrush paint, which you put it on with a brush and it works great. And then I just threw sepia tone over it, Seraphim Sepia, and it just, one layer over the top of it, and it turns it into soft brass. And it was a lot of fun, and they were fun to paint. I'm working on building forces for Zona Alpha. These cultists, because there's a cultist faction in Zona Alpha, because of course there is, these cultists came from Anvil Industry UK, and they are multi-part resin kind of modular models. I love all the stuff that I've been getting from Anvil Industry. Anvil Industry was one of the choices for the Tabletop Minions Awards this year, which hopefully you've watched that, but if not, pachow. And these cultists are great. I've also gotten a bunch of more private military contractor, modern day type of folks that are also gonna be going for Zona Alpha, but I haven't built them yet. But I've ordered a bunch of stuff from them lately, and I've really been enjoying it. These guys were real simple to paint. I primed them basically like a dark color, like a dark black or maybe even dark brown, and then hit them with some red primer, and then just went in and just kind of picked out all the other parts and did some washes, and they were a pretty quick speed paint. To go along with the previous guys, sometimes you need bad guys when you're playing a game like Zona Alpha, and military zombies seemed like a thing. And I was thinking to myself, I haven't found any good military zombies. I'm going to have to kit bash them. And so I just grabbed actually some really old miniatures that I don't even know where they came from, these little sprues. I think Defiance Games might have been the name of the company, but I believe that they're out of business. And they've got sort of some vaguely sci-fi military dudes, and then I just mixed them in with mantic zombies and ghouls and stuff like that, and just mixed the parts together, and they worked out really well. Again, super fast, quick paint, a lot of contrast. And then now you got some random military zombies that'll pop up at the military base or whatever in any game of Zona Alpha. Unbeknownst to you folks, Vince and I were working on a game called Rain in Hell, and I had to get models together so that we could take some photos so they would go into the thing. Vince was doing the same. So on my end, one of the first things that I did, models that I painted up that I could use in Rain in Hell, the photography and stuff like that, were these demons from Frostgrave. They've got armor plate, and they've got some fun weapons, and they basically just look like little, it looks like almost like knights, but they're cosplaying as demons a little bit. So it's interesting, but I liked them. And so, yeah, I painted those guys up quick. Again, pretty quick speed paint. All the Frostgrave models and now Stargrave models that I've come across have been really nice to work with. So I've been real happy with them. This model had been sitting with a Zenithal Prime in my airbrush room for 2 to 3 years, just sitting there staring at me. I just was like, nah, what? And all of a sudden, inexplicably, for no good reason, I got a wild hair one afternoon on a Saturday, and I painted the model up over the course of 2 days, real quick. Just, I was doing other stuff. I was just messing around. But I speed painted this guy really quickly with a lot of contrast, obviously some metallics and some weathering and this and that. But, sometimes you just look at a model long enough and eventually you just go, you know what, today's the day, and you just bang it out. I kind of kept up on Twitter and was like, hey, here it is in the next step. Here I am. And so there's sometimes that can also give you a boost if you've got people who you're friends with, and then they can maybe comment on it and stuff like that, on Twitter. It's maybe something to, get the model moved along. But I was glad to finally get this guy done because, like I said, he's been sitting around just Zenithal black and white for seriously a really long time. This big red demon is a 3D print, and it again was going to be used in Rain in Hell. If you've ever been to the website, you've probably seen him right there on the front page of the Rain in Hell part, not on the front page of the actual game company part, but you see what I'm saying. He's also featured in the book. It's a great model, and my friend Matt from the Game 4 podcast that we do, he and I, he printed it, and then I got to paint it and stuff like that. Again, pretty much a speed paint, but then I worked with Artists Empire, which has got a YouTube channel here that you should also check out, Pachow, and he took that model along with all these other models I'm going to be talking about from Rain in Hell that I worked on before the launch of Rain in Hell, and digitally magicified them, and I think it turned out really, really great. Following a theme, we've got more models that are demons for Rain in Hell. And so these were all 3D printed. I needed to kind of speed paint them up and then get them set up for photography. White background, like a well-lit white background, but I wanted them to be kind of darker, and a little bit moody. And then Artist Empire went in, did the digital magic, and I think they turned out great. Again, these were speed painted because I knew that there was going to be a lot of work done to them kind of post photo. And so therefore, but they still look, I think, pretty good just in general, like standing there in front of whatever. Games Workshop launched a game called Cursed City. Have you heard of it? Maybe. Evidently, it's going to get launched again in 2022. Anyway, I got a copy of it, and I started working on some of the models from it. One of the first things I did was I did the skeletons. I did, I think, 10 of them, and they're great models. I really, really like these skeletons. They turned out spectacular. Did a bunch of photography, put them on Instagram, stuff like that. A lot of fun to paint. These guys I definitely remember painting for quite some time on Twitch. They took a good amount of time to get done. I still speed painted them because I kind of speed paint everything. I'm not much of a display painter, but sometimes there's speed painting and then there's speed painting. And these guys were quick-ish, but honestly, they're kind of hard to paint in some spots because they've got bone, like thighs going up underneath like the flowy robes, and it's really hard to get in there, and you can't really paint them in sub-assemblies because they're kind of push fit. So that kind of slowed me down a little bit, but I think they turned out well. And then at some point, Dominion was released, which was the Age of Sigmar 3rd edition starter box, which came with a whole bunch of, it came with some new Stormcast and a bunch of new orc-ish kind of folks. There were these Cruel Boys, with big spikes and smiley face spears, which I thought were pretty cool. And I didn't do a ton of work on that entire box, but I did bang out 3 of those guys, get them all built and then painted. I don't think I did it on Twitch. I think I just did it on a weekend just for funsies. And they turned out great. I really liked those models. And I think now that they've released some Warcry stats for a lot of the stuff in Dominion, I think I'm probably going to eventually, in 2022, build a Warcry warband for Cruel Boys and that kind of stuff, and then see where we go from there. Another game that I gave a Tabletop Minions Award to this year, 2021, is Space Weirdos, which I've talked about a good amount on the channel. And if you want to see, go check out the Pachow from before. But one of the things that game has done is it's caused me to sit down and just build small little war bands, little groups of kind of just maybe weird sci-fi folks, maybe sci-fi folks who are weird, who are in space, space weirdos. And so I took these House to Lock bodies from Necromunda, and then I took some heads from a bunch of different places, including like a Tau Pathfinder and some stuff from Puppets War and a bunch of different, resin bits companies and things like that, and just sort of built this quick little war band. I'd already built the stats for it on, figured out based off of the rule set what I was going to look for, and then I went through. I like to usually build a list and then build the models, unless I'm taking something that's like, I've already had these models for a long time, then you have to go the other way around. But if you're building something for a game where you get to make your own people or whatever, then it's fun to do it that way. And I don't know that the paint scheme turned out as well as I would have liked. It's close, but not there. It kind of looks like they're wearing really big denim cloaks, which I'm not sure if that's what I was looking for, but it's not too bad. I don't know. They're good enough. It's sometimes, they can't all be bangers. And then the Octarius box for Kill Team was released in late July or early August. I don't exactly remember. And so you had Orc Commandos, and you also had Death Corps of Krieg, aka Veteran Guardsmen, but they're Death Corps of Krieg models. I have not done the Orcs yet. I do still want to build and paint up those Orcs from that box, the Commandos. So I've got 2 fun lists to play with, but I did speed paint up the Krieg. I did not want to go through and make every last little thing on their uniforms like a different color, like, oh, this is this and this. Just because if you look at like real military stuff, a lot of things are the same color. So I don't know. I think that in comparison to the way some people painted it, they probably look a little bland. But again, I was okay with that because it makes them, at least in my mind, it makes them a little touch more realistic for, crazy space army people. Also for Zona Alpha, I painted these guys from Eureka Miniatures. These guys are metal miniatures in what's known as MOP gear, which is basically to help protect against stuff, nuclear, biological, chemical, that kind of jazz and whatever. And I'm using these guys as independents in Warcry, and they are so they're all wearing like the same gear roughly, but they've got different weapons. Some of them are just like Soviet, and some of them I want them to have all gone to the same army surplus store before they went out to do some, to become stalkers out in the Zona Alpha exclusion zone or whatever. But like they kind of chose weapons that were kind of just like, well, I like this one. Well, I like this one, but they're all wearing the same gear kind of. They're metal miniatures, which they're the few. Did not paint a lot of metal miniatures this year. These guys and that Harbinger of Decay. He's an old enough model that he's actually the metal version that I got off of eBay, and not the new. Well, he's not new, but the resin version. That kind of stuff. So, but yeah, they've worked out well. Again, speed painted, just kind of quick and dirty. And again, because they're military, kept them a lot the same color too. A game I used to play a long, long time ago when I was in early college and such was called Car Wars. And it was not particularly a miniatures game. You pushed around little cardboard chips that had a top-down drawing of a car on it, and you played it on a grid piece of paper, kind of, and whatnot. And, because now it's 2021, they did a Kickstarter, released a brand new version, changed things quite a bit. Honestly, it leans a lot more towards Star Wars X-Wing as far as the play is concerned anymore. You're not on a grid anymore. And you don't use cardboard chips. You use these plastic miniatures, which are they're well designed but poorly executed. The models have got crazy mold lines on them, like mold lines that you'd have to grind it down and then go back and fill the area again. And I'm just like, yeah, that's not important to me. So I just basically I did what I could, and then I painted them up, airbrush, a lot of stuff like that, made them look real grungy. Some of them I did with Turbo Dork metallics. which worked great. They worked actually too well because then it made them look like Hot Wheels again, which I'm like, well, now they look like Hot Wheels. I don't want that. So then I had to kind of dull it down a good deal. So you can still catch that they're some of them are a little metallic and have that kind of cool sheen that you get from Turbo Dork. But yeah, I needed to make them look beat up and rusty. I'm looking for a little bit more Mad Max and a little bit less Matchbox Car. So otherwise, they turned out well. And I'm working on some new ones and whatnot. There's actually a whole bunch that came in the Kickstarter that I got. And so I'll probably be working on them on and off in between, not on Twitch, that kind of thing, for quite some time. I wanted a cabal of miniatures that I could use in a battle report with Vince. And we've shot it. I just haven't got done editing it yet. So it'll come eventually. But I wanted to have these models. And so I thought, what if I got all 3D printed models? So I went on to Etsy and I bought a bunch of different 3D printed models from people, and they all came, and then I painted them up. And these guys I was also painting on Twitch, remember, not completely, but enough. And they turned out, again, pretty well. Speed paint, but sort of fun. It just goes to show, like, a lot of these were Dungeons and Dragons miniatures. So when people are like, well, I don't know where to find demons for the game, I'm just like, literally any kind of Dungeons and Dragons monster can also be a demon. Just, if you believe in yourself. Another fun group, another warband for Warcry that I finished on Twitch this year was a group of Slaves to Darkness. It was mostly the Slaves to Darkness, start collecting box. Not all of it, but a portion of it. And, I got the regular Chaos Warrior guys. I had this extra Chaos, Lord, who would stand on a thing of skulls, and he's cool. And then, of course, the big Chaos Warrior guy, Lord, on Karkadrak, or Crack-a-lack-a-ding-dong, as I called him most of the time, because that particular model, that big lizard dog, that guy sucks. He was no fun to build at all. So I ended up not being able to properly build him, and then I had to go onto eBay, find somebody who'd already built it and then never painted it, scrape off the mold lines, and then here we are. When searching around on Etsy, which is sort of dangerous if you're looking for just 3D printed stuff, it can be sometimes sort of dangerous. I've bought probably some more things than I probably ought to have. But one thing I did buy recently, which I'll probably use for maybe Stargrave, maybe Star or Space Weirdos, maybe even Planet 28, any one of those types of kind of more indie sci-fi games. These kind of cyberpunk dudes, they're big, sort of beefy cyberpunk soldiers. They might be robots, but they may very possibly be not. And then they got two friends with them who are definitely robots because they're very skinny. The little robot guys reminded me of that Chappie movie, or pretty much any time that you saw robot cops in any Neil Blomkamp movie. And so I just really liked the look of them, and that's also why I painted them blue, gave them a little bit of a white stripe here and there and all that stuff to make them look like official cop robots and everything like that. Those other guys, they could be black ops or who knows what, and they're also very tall. It's maybe a scale issue, but sometimes just people are tall, so sometimes scale isn't as important. If they were 6mm, that would be weird. But if they're just a little too big or a little bit bigger than 28mm, I'm fine with it. I was at a fun little miniatures convention here in Wisconsin back in October called Dragonfall, and I ended up buying some pre-built and pre-painted Ossiarch Bone Reapers, Mortec Guard, actually, from Grognard Games. They had a booth there. They were selling a bunch of used stuff and stuff on sprue and things like that. Just great to kind of go through and go, oh, these are neat. And I bought some Mortec Guard, which I think I've talked about here on the channel a little bit, or otherwise I've talked about them on Twitch. And I decided I want to make a Warcry warband out of them, but I needed to add some stuff. So we ended up with a bunch of Mortec Guard that I repainted. I just literally primed right over the top of them and went to town. And then I added in the big guy with the two swords and the bone shaper guy standing on the giant skull. It's a giant skull, not a giant skull. You see where I'm going with that. And they were a ton of fun to paint. I really did spend a decent amount of time on the two bigger guys, the two HQ type units. The guy with the swords, whose name I keep forgetting. It's maybe a stalker or an immortal stalker, or I don't know, I forget. And then the bone shaper, I worked on the skull, the giant skull that he was standing on quite a bit because it was a lot of fun. And I just did a bunch of layering and stuff like that. And I think he turned out pretty well. One of the last projects I finished so far for the year were these sort of post-apocalyptic raiders from Puppets War. These models are resin, and you can tell that they're probably hand sculpted and not computer sculpted. And it's because there's a lot of spots where you're like, I don't know what this little piece of detail is. Is this more of his cloak? Is this part of his belt? Is that a skin tag? Like, I don't know. It's just, they're spots. They have a lot of personality, but there's times when you're just like, you're painting and you're like, I don't know what I'm painting right now. And so, and that sometimes bothers me these days. I think I'm a little spoiled with computer CAD designed models because you can obviously look at every last piece and go, well, I know what that is, and I know what that is, which makes it a lot more fun to paint sometimes, and you're not just kind of winging it. But again, they're post-apocalyptic. You can throw a lot of wash on them and kind of covers all sins. And so, again, these were like a weekend speed paint that was a lot of fun, and I'll use them in probably all kinds of different games, but I just wanted to give them a try. So just some quick mentions of some models that I worked on this year but didn't finish. And I'm just going to try to run through these quick because this video is already going really long. Terrorgeist, big old bony zombie dragon guy. Worked on him on Twitch. He still needs a good another pass of highlights and stuff, I think, on his body, and then his base needs to be painted. You're going to hear that a lot. But yeah, that's basically where he's at. He was a ton of fun to work on. That's not true. He was a pain in the butt to work on because there's so many bones. You know what I mean? Nonetheless, Mutalith Vortex Beast. Also a big guy. Also needs his base finished and a couple other things. Again, maybe a pattern. Also not so much fun to paint. Honestly, he is covered not so much in bones, but in spikes. There's a lot of spikes going on there, and you got to go through and paint each one of them and everything. And so, yeah, eventually I do want to finish him up because both of these guys I can use in Warcry, but I don't have a lot of like push to do it. You know what I'm saying? What else have we got? Oh yeah, the Cursed City Heroes. I not only did those skeletons, but then I also painted a bunch of the other people whose names I completely forget, and I'm not even going to bother. Let's just say that they're a bunch of Cursed City Heroes, except one of them I think is a skeleton guy, and he's bad. But otherwise, the one who's got the face and the giant, I thought it was a tongue coming out from under his mask, and I was just like, well, that's stupid. I've been told it's a beard. Doesn't look like a beard. I shaved the whole thing off and gave him a skull head. That was easier. But filling the gaps on his back did not work out properly, so that's why I never got farther with him, and I need to figure out what to do. I think I might just cover it in texture or maybe grass. Maybe he's got grass growing on the back of him. That might work. Who knows? Looks kind of like a Led Zeppelin cover, but not quite, and I needed to fix that. So what else have we got here? I did an entire Cabal for Rain and Hell of GW stuff, which, again, base is not finished. Also, I got a Mephit who I didn't even, like, he's primed, and that's literally as far as I got. But the rest of those guys I painted on Twitch, and they were a lot of fun, and most of them have turned out pretty well, but again, I haven't finished their bases. What else? Oh, big Redemptor Dreadnought. I built him to be kind of crooked and weird, and I covered him in skulls and made him one of those kind of Forsaken robots that I like to do. I've probably, if you've been following me for a while, you've seen some of the other Forsaken robots that I like to do, where basically it's a robot that was left behind after the battle finished, and it's just like kind of stomping around and being like, I don't know what to do. Kind of like Wall-E, but with a gun, or maybe multiple guns. So anyway, he was a lot of fun to paint. Again, got to finish that base. What else? Stargrave team. Those guys are completely made out of, well, not complete. There's a couple of them made out of other parts, but mostly made out of the Stargrave miniatures from North Star. And they're fun to work with, but they're very smooth. So I had to make sure to go through, and I'm not finished yet, but they're going to be grunged up because if they're too clean and too smooth, I don't believe they're in a post-apocalyptic kind of after the Great Galactic War sort of situation. They seem like they've been too well dry cleaned as of recently. So that's why I want to grunge them up a little bit more and, of course, finish their bases. Let's see. Anybody else? I think that's all of it. I got a big list here on my phone, and it was more stuff than I thought. I'll be perfectly honest. So I'm hoping that you folks have also gotten some things done that you wanted to get done in 2021. Keep doing that. And if you did, great. And if you didn't, well, maybe 2022 is your year. You know what I mean? Like it's all about, for me, it's been, I don't want to say easy, but having Twitch and painting on Twitch gives me a twice a week at the very least time when I sit down for 3 hours and I work on stuff. There are other times during the week where I might not get to paint at all, and maybe I only get to paint on the weekend, or maybe there's even weekends where I barely get to paint. So there's that. But having these are the times when people are watching me paint, and then that's helped a bunch, honestly. I don't know about, I could probably never do one of those hobby streaks, that kind of stuff, but having an audience kind of to talk to, whether it's something that you're just going to start posting things weekly on maybe Instagram, if that gives you a push in the right direction or whatever. Or maybe it's just finding models that you like better or a painting technique you like better. I, again, like I said, hope that for 2022, you can get some projects done that you really like and maybe paint more than last year. Unless you painted a whole bunch last year, then maybe you can, coast a little bit this year if you want to. Maybe do some other things, work on some terrain. I did a little bit of terrain, but not nearly as much as I would have liked. So I want to thank you folks who've made it to the end of the video and checked out all my weird painted stuff. And again, I hope that you have a good 2022. We're heading into it, and we don't have a lot of choice. It's coming whether we like it or not. So I want to thank everybody for coming by and checking out my miniatures and watching the videos all this year and coming to Twitch and everything. Listen to me on Twitter and all the dumb things. And I want to thank every one of you for that. So I hope you had a good 2021, and I hope to see you in 2022.